We don't talk that much about the Ukraine war on Rebel News. We're against wars. They are a failure to resolve problems peacefully. They punish civilians, especially women and children. They set back entire civilizations. Now, there are some things worse than war, as in there are some things more valuable than peace. Being a prisoner could be quite peaceful. That wouldn't make it good. You need justice along with your peace. You need freedom along with your peace. There's that protest chant, no justice, no peace. You sometimes hear people say, well, what has war ever accomplished? Well, I can think of a lot of things, actually. The independence of many countries, the liberation of many countries, even civil wars can have positive outcomes, the liberation of slaves, for example. Many veterans hold that the wars they served in were highly moral and deeply patriotic. I think most people agree with that most of the time, actually. But this war in Ukraine feels a little bit off. I've never seen such unanimity in the establishment. Well, I guess since the pandemic. It's not just unanimity that Russia ought to be expelled from Ukraine, but that war must be the means, total war, a grinding war to wear down Russia and its military and to invoke regime change to destroy Russian infrastructure, whether it's a bridge to Crimea or the underwater pipeline for natural gas, to destroy the capital ship Moskva. Destruction of Russia isn't just the means, it seems like the end. The ends, that is. I also find it a little bit odd to see the Ukrainian president so idolized. I've never seen it before. And his flaws so overlooked, his violation of civil liberties at home, banning critical media or opposition parties, even going to war against the church in his own country. Vladimir Putin does similar things, and he's condemned for it. I think Ukraine and Russia are actually quite similar in their violation of civil liberties. The corruption, even as $100 billion floods into Ukraine, raises an eyebrow and calls for even harder and harsher wars. It feels manufactured, this consent. I say again, I'm against Russia's invasion, and I'm against the war that Russia started. But the weird thing is the Western geopolitical, military, diplomatic establishment seems to actually want the war itself as opposed to wanting the end of the war. It's almost like they have a whole Cold War of pent-up frustration that they finally have a chance to fight Russia on a battlefield in Europe. They never got that chance in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, so damn it, they'll take that chance now. I've never seen such a thing. But something shocking was revealed the other day by a most unusual source, Naftali Bennett, who until actually just a few months ago, when Bibi Netanyahu was reelected, Naftali Bennett was Israel's prime minister. So he was PM when Russia invaded Ukraine. And a week or two after the Russian invasion last year, this Israeli PM, Naftali Bennett, secretly flew to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin. Now remember, Israel is surprisingly close to Russia and Ukraine, and the reason for that is when the Berlin Wall fell and when Russia and Ukraine were de-Sovietized, a lot of Jews in Russia and Ukraine immigrated to Israel. Jews had often been dissidents. They were picked on by the Soviet regime. A lot of the so-called refuseniks, a lot of the democracy activists in Russia were actually Jews. And so once the Berlin Wall came down, about 1 million Jews and some non-Jews came from Russia and Ukraine to Israel. In fact, you can hear Russian spoken in the streets of Israel as much as any other language, almost as much as English. So Israel has a connection, obviously, to the West and obviously to its patron, the United States, but it has an active, real connection to Russia and Ukraine. So when the war broke out, you'll remember Israel was reluctant to jump on the bandwagon of condemning Putin. In fact, Israel's PM secretly flew to meet Putin. And he says, and this is the news, that Vladimir Putin agreed to two of what Bennett calls big concessions. According to Naftali Bennett, I'm just saying what he said, that Vladimir Putin agreed to abandon his demand for the denazification of Ukraine. Now, there are some Nazis there. You know, the Azov battalion actually consider themselves Nazis, but that's also code word for how Russia denounces others in the Kiev regime, as they call it. So Russia would really drop its demand for regime change of Ukraine, and it would drop the demand for Ukraine to be disarmed. Naftali Bennett said that these were quite large concessions. Here, watch this video. It's in Hebrew, but there's English subtitles, and I'll play it again a little bit later. So watch this video. I think this is huge news, and I ask you, have you seen this anywhere? This is not just some guy. This is not a pundit. This is someone who was there. He was the negotiator. He was the prime minister of a major country. Here, take a look.
לגרמניה, כי גרמניה היא השחקנית, היא וצרפת השחקנים המשמעותיים ביותר באירופה, וכדי להביא להסכם, כולם צריכים לעשות דברים, מעין פרוטוקול של מה היה, ואז מה הצעדים הבאים, בסוף מה המחלוקות במשא ומתן ומה צריך מכל אחד. משם אני חושב שביחד אפילו, אבל אני לא בטוח, עדכנו את האמריקאים, ואת מקרון.
מה זה אמריקאים? ביידן עצמו או ש...
לא, הפעם, זה היה בדרך כלל מול היועץ לביטחון לאומי ג'ייק סליבן, לפעמים מול ביידן, לפעמים מול בלינקן, הם מאוד הדוקים שם, ובוריס ג'ונסון. עכשיו, אתה יודע, היו, כל מנהיג והדרך שלו, בוריס היה, בוא נגיד, אפשר לחלק ספקטרום של מנהיגים, מי יותר נוטה לקו של עכשיו צריך להילחם בפוטין.
כי הוא הרע ואסור לתגמל את הרעים.
נכון.
ומי אומר, אבל עזוב יש מלחמה, במלחמה כולם מפסידים.
נכון, ובוא נגיד, בוריס ג'ונסון היה מאוד בקו התקיף, הייתי אומר שמקרון ושולץ היו בקו היותר פרגמטי נקרא לזה, וביידן גם וגם, נגיד את זה בצורה רחבה, אני חושב שהייתה החלטה של המערב לגיטימית, שכרגע צריך להמשיך להכות בפוטין, ולא להגיע, פרטי פרטים, גם עם ארצות הברית, גם עם גרמניה, גם עם צרפת.
אז הם בעצם חדלו את זה?
בגדול, כן, בגדול הם חדלו את זה, ובאותו זמן חשבתי שהם שוגים. אני טוען שבסבירות לא רעה אפשר היה להגיע.
אם הם לא חודלים את זה?
אם הם לא חודלים, לא בטוח.
I think that's interesting. I want to go through that now. He said Zelensky made concessions too, by the way. That was obviously an excerpt of a larger video. Zelensky agreed to renounce Ukraine's membership in NATO, which was a real sticking point for Putin. Now, Bennett didn't say the deal was a done deal, but he said it looked promising. Sort of more than 50-50 chance. And incredibly, he said he did this in complete coordination with the U.S., Germany, France. He said he really didn't go there as a party or as an advocate, but rather as a, fair dealer, a negotiator, a mediator, as someone trying to facilitate an outcome. But in the end, as you heard, he was following U.S. guidance. Again, that's to be expected. Now, he named names, didn't he? He said he was in constant touch with State Department officials like Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, and even Joe Biden himself. But here's the crazy part. Bennett says, you saw the translation there, that there was a decision by the West to keep striking Putin, as in the military didn't want to give up the war part of the war. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest, either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. We rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.